It says not sharing is not turned on. Sorry, you got to make me a co-host again.
Oh, you're right. Okay, I see that. Yeah, that's important. Okay, now you're a
Oh,
co-host, so
I
you
see
can
it. Okay.
show us this
Let's see if I can get this fire up here.
PowerPoint.
Okay.
Let me do a little introduction first, but I
Okay.
think, yeah, that's on now, so I'll go ahead and do a little introduction here.
Okay.
Let's see if this works. Can you see that? Is it full screen?
No, that's your slide view.
What's that?
That's your presenter's view.
Okay, I'm gonna switch.
Switch displays, yeah.
Yeah, how's that?
There you go.
Okay, well, this is our 25th Zoom meeting. I'm glad we can do it this way and bring in people from many different places, Colorado and Idaho and Alaska. There is some that join from Alaska too, Rick. Um, so we're going to get an update uh, following that typhoon. Let me see if I can. And this is impressive because it's such a community effort. That's what I've always been impressed by. You have Stephanie Roberts here, got this carving of a Umiak. Anything you want to tell us about Stephanie, Rick?
Get there with the slide.
Oh, you see the slide?
I have a slide of her. Yeah.
I know you do. I'm scooping you.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so he'll talk about her and probably Jimmy John's, which became a very popular image. I should point out that Rick and I were on Anchorage TV
Oh, yeah.
about the fundraising, and that was an interesting experience. Um, but the kids too, the kids over here looking through the trays, it's all critical to the future, for the generations that are coming and identity and uh, cultural connections they have. Again, this is where Rick has been working, and now it's Quinhaga.
Quinnock.
See, if I try harder, it gets worse. Uh, we didn't have the before and after, and he'll show that, but this is a nice picture of Rick finding this doll. Um, Let me do a little bit about what we're doing. I've been talking about. I've been working on the museum board with the Squaxin Island tribe, and we're working on a mammoth exhibit that they call Gateway to Squaxin because they see them as potentially some of the first people to come into the continent down the glaciated coast here. Uh, and we have a number of mammoth bones from different museums, but this mammoth tooth we've dated at 15,000 years ago. So certainly people were here at that point. And then these leg bones came in at 18,000 years ago. And we're working on showing the weaponry they would have used. Again, our Chehalis River hypothesis has been a theme several times as far as the first people coming into the continent and came down the glaciated coast, probably in hide-covered boats, not unlike the Umiak that Stephanie was holding. And a friend of Rick, Sven Hawkinson. We just met with him. He's at the UW, curator at the Berks, going to give us a model skin boat for the exhibit and some other things. And it came down the coast. The first place they would get behind the ice, beyond the ice front, is the Chehalis River drainage. That's our Chehalis idea that the first people coming into this whole second Earth, the American continent, would have come into the Chehalis. This is the Chehalis and how it spilled through the Black Lake spillway through Squaxin territory today, which would have made a much bigger river than the valley would the valley of the Chehalis would imply, but it was huge because it drained freshwater Lake Russell, now Puget Sound. The ice would have blocked off the straits, and so people would have made their way in here, found this very interesting, looking for lithic materials, certainly seeing some of the fauna and flora, and would have come up into this freshwater lake with islands. We've found not a lot of evidence that shows specifically the earliest people, but we do have this Black Lake biface, which is monstrous, found right here. This is Black Lake. It's found right here. And here's the size of it. It's really pretty massive. Can you see it okay? Or do you want me to shut this down? But I'll shut it down just briefly. Can you see it? Now I lost it. I shouldn't have done that. Okay. Anyway, so you can't see this anymore, I don't think, Matt. What did I do? Oh, here we go, maybe. I think we got into his slideshow. Here we go.
We can see
Anyway, you can see it enough. You can see it enough. It's a massive biface. What's that, Matt? And we're going to SPSCC, my old college, to do 3D imaging, 3D printing. So this is their first one with white filament, but now you can really see the size of this biface. There you go. Thank you. Everybody see that? And it has little notches in it, which is kind of like what they call a turkey tail back east, but and they'll go back to about 7,000. So it may not be really ancient, but it certainly is a spectacular one. The guy that found it's private, he found out he might get a lot of money for it and sold it back east. So we don't have it anymore. He can't donate it to the Squaxin exhibit on early people. But we're definitely, you can see even flakes on that. We'll work with the 3D printing at the college. And we actually found the tip too. We'll have this as part of the exhibit. Okay, I'm going back to sharing here. Is it on okay?
Yep.
Yeah. So this is the LiDAR. We went to DNR with the tribe and we got these spectacular LiDAR maps of the area to survey. But here's the Chehalis. This is Capitol Forest Park. This is all public lands. And then we assume people came up the spillway into Squaxin territory here. So we're real interested and we're searching through this. There's Wattle Creek that comes down and you could easily see early campgrounds that would never be flooded up this little inlet here, or maybe Mima Creek. And these are Mima mounds here, which is a geologic phenomena they've never explained. And here's a picture of them. There's thousands of those mounds through here. And the idea is herds of mammoth, bison, maybe occasional sloth would find their way through these Mima mounds, and we're reconstructing the tundra environment, which would be very much like Rick's. And the vegetation that the mammoths, the bison, would be very interested in. So they walk in a line, those herd animals, bisons and mammoths. And the Squaxins right in on this. Their hunters say, well, these Mima mounds would be a great ambush. So these animals would be going along. This trail here is current trails that we can walk on. Um, and you could get behind these 6 foot mounds and hide yourself with an atolel, these spear throwers that are very good ballistics, like 357 Magnums. But you wouldn't be out standing there in front of a mammoth, which is deadly. You'd be throwing them from the side of a mima mound. See, the one thing about an antelope, you got to show yourself. But if you're behind one of these 6 foot mounds, you can go off the side and you can come from other directions, a straggler mammoth or bison you could get. Um, I guess what I should say is what we're working on, and we hope you're interested, is to do survey work like in Wattle Creek and this area of the Mima Mounds. And there's great campgrounds. You need a Discover Pass, but there's great campgrounds up here with picnic tables and grills, metal grills. And like Matt will bring his probably bring his RV, and in the spring we may be able to set up some time to really go up into these areas and walk along here and see if we can find anything else. But this is probably happening in the beginning of the year. They probably will be doing Adelaide workshops by Dan Miot, who did this for us at Matt Barkley's house once. Some of you came, how to make an Adelaide, and we did it also at the Mountaineers. But he's replicating Adelaides that'll go on the wall. We'll have the black replica of the Black Lake biface. We went to the UW Burke. We're getting a mammoth mastodon tooth to compare to this mammoth tooth. They're very different. A dire wolf fake skull that we can show because dire wolves actually hunted mammoths, which is unbelievable, and bison, and we'll get some other things from the Burke megafauna. So it'll be quite an exhibit. It'll be real fun. If you've been to the beautiful Squaxin Museum, the back wall will have a full-size mammoth. You'll have a sensor, so when the kids walk towards that image, there'll be an elephant just roaring, just crazy. And a lot of this is for the kids to see what their environment was like in the earlier, late Pleistocene. And then it'll travel to the other tribal museums for the same effect. It'll go to Laylup, it'll go to Suquamish, out to Macaw. And the Puyallups are building a really nice museum, so it might go there. So I've said enough about this. And so, like I said, Rick's been working on Alaska sites since 1983, which is quite a while. He's worked in sites in the Pacific in general, and Russia, and down in Palau. But he's directed this Nunalak archaeological project in cooperation with the descendant community, Quinhagat, Alaska, since 2009. And help establish the museum in 2018. So the museum's been going since then. And he's currently an emeritus senior lecturer at the archaeology at the University of Aberdeen in Scotland, and working on cataloging and rescuing and continuing to catalog and analyze the Nunalak collections. And he was almost done with a manuscript, as I understand it, but this adds a lot to additional information. But he's been amazing in writing lots of papers on even, basketry and dogs and isotope analysis of hair. And birds, waterfowl in the area. Over 90 publication, and certainly working on this one for the Yupik site here, and 95 plus invited lectures. He's did one for us in October, so we really appreciate that. And he actually did a Penwa's talk in 1989 when we did the Circum-Pacific Prehistory Conference at the Seattle Center. I don't think he came. He was co-author with and so anyway, with that, I really appreciate Rick joining us again and presenting this update on this rescue of the wood and fiber artifacts. Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Dale, and thanks for having me. I I had my thing up there. Oh, there it is. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Can you see that okay? Is that working?
Can you?
Can you see the slide?
No, I think you'll have to share again.
I don't quite see it yet. Is
Okay, let's see.
is it on, Matt?
No, Rick will need to share his screen again.
Okay, let's see. Where is it? Share. Nope, that's not wrong button. All right. It was up and now, oh, let's see. Oh, there's a share button. All right. Entire screen. Okay.
Comment,
And
I
then
think, Rick. There you go.
I'm getting it.
Yeah, there's your
Okay. How's that?
perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me back. Just to update you a little bit on what went on this fall. Um, just to review, we are in Southwest Alaska in the Yupik culture area in the Queenahawk, one of about 60 villages. And here it is as it looks now, just a little snow on the ground. It's one of the bigger villages, almost 700 people, very low-lying area. And this is the delta here, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta is about the size of Oregon, and with a virtually unknown archaeological record until we started excavating the site in 2009 in close cooperation with the people in the village who started finding artifacts on the beach. And since 2009, we've been out there just about every year trying to stay ahead of the erosion. It's a few miles down the beach from the village that you can see way in the background by that tower on the shores of the Bering Sea, just south of the mouth of the Kuskokwim River. And as you'll recall, we were digging a big sod house complex that was built during the bow and arrow wars to house numerous um, nuclear families. And we've since added a few more side rooms to that, built sometime around 1600 and destroyed a few generations later by an attack. And the first layer we ran into, of course, was the attack layer where the house had been burned down with many of the possessions of people from that day still left in situ. This is the kitchen area where we found bowls and spoons and clay pots and that sort of thing left over. And underneath, of course, were nearly 1.5 meters of beautifully preserved materials preserved by the permafrost. And about 80% of everything we found is organic material, mostly wood, but also including grass baskets and leather and just about everything you can imagine. So the recovery has been huge from that. And this is the Knecht Museum, where it's a converted preschool, where since 2017 we've been able to do all the conservation and storage of the collections so that can be appreciated and utilized locally for teaching purposes and just for preserving that archaeological record. And that's access that most villages just don't have. If we sent that stuff off to a major institution, we might as well send it to the moon because local people who work so hard with us uh, recovering that material wouldn't have access to it, but now they do. So As you know, we got hit by a monster typhoon, and we lost 60 feet of shoreline plus all up and down the the shoreline between from here to Quinault, several miles of it. This is what it looked like, kind of a before and after our last excavation, 2024, and this is what it looked like after the typhoon hit. And those tarps, of course, covered the last area where we were digging. So, looking at an aerial of the site taken in 2023, that red line is where the shoreline is now. And so, luckily, most of that material there, where you see the back dirt pile up, most of that we'd excavated already, but certainly not all of it, especially the lower layers, because we'd been intentionally digging near the shoreline because we knew that was the most endangered. But we'd left about a good 30 feet of what we call what we thought was a buffer, and that proved massively insufficient because we lost that 30 feet plus another 30 feet in one night during the typhoon. The entire site was underwater because the high tide was 12 feet above normal because of the surge pushed in by the wind during the typhoon. So the picture below is 2017 when we had a lot of house posts exposed. We left most of those posts intact because they're pretty deeply buried. Now they're scattered all over the tundra. They were all over the place, but one still survived. And the top picture is what the site looks like now. And the bottom picture is that same post to give you an idea of where it was located. So it took a big bite, to say the least. So this is what the beach used to look like in the top picture. And the bottom picture is what it looks like now, like the moon. Most of that sand was pulled away by the typhoon. And that gray stuff left behind is the old Pleistocene clay. The entire post-Pleistocene record and soil accumulation is between the grass and that gray clay. It's about a foot and a half of it. A lot of Pleistocene fossils are contained there. We found 4 mammoth teeth the first day. No artifacts, of course, but that scattered stuff in the background are what remains of all that tundra and archaeological site. It's going to be pretty tough to recover from that. When that clay dries up, it falls apart very quickly and erodes even faster than the soils do. Um, and when it gets wet, it also turns into kind of a quicksand. So the beach has been used as kind of a highway up and down. We used to even be able to drive vehicles up and down it, uh, but not anymore. Now it's even difficult to get a four-wheeler up and down. So the site looked like a bomb hit it. All those little chunks out there are pieces of turf and tundra, and all the wood is from the site. Um, Now, only about 1 out of 20 or 30 pieces of wood from the site was worked and considered an artifact, but all the stuff was driftwood 500 years ago, and now it's driftwood again. Um, and it's scattered as far as we can see. It's a very shallow area, and so it's stuff got thrown out there for the better part of a mile. Now we can't really get out there because that mud is like quicksand. You go more than about 20 feet out there and you start sinking. It's kind of like a Cook Inlet. It's really dangerous to go out there because you get stuck and you're out there when the tide comes in, you're in trouble. So we can only really salvage the stuff from about that first 30 feet of from the low tide line there. So this is what it looks like. All those little pieces of wood scattered all over from the site, and a fair percentage of those were artifacts. This was the case for about 3 to 4 miles of beach, and this is what it looked like on the shoreline. A combination of just chunks of driftwood, but also shaft fragments and other artifacts. So, what to do? But in comes the cavalry from Quinnock, and right away, people got out there and started picking things up, not to collect and take home, but for the museum. And here's a mask fragment, for example, that was found by a father and son team actually on a low tide. And if the stuff in a low tide hadn't been recovered, it got crushed to pieces by the ice that came in within about a week. Sarah there has a mask attachment, an actual little hand that was once attached to a mask. And there's Stephanie's umiak, a really rare artifact. We have small models of umiaks or open boats, open skin boats. These are made, on a frame with a skin covering. But to find a great big intact one is pretty spectacular. And Mr. Matthew found this really beautiful, complete wooden bowl, bentwood bowl with the lashing still intact and the bottom still intact, and so on. And he found it in one of these small stream mouths floating like a little boat. The most spectacular piece was found by Jimmy Jones here. And this is, world class, World Heritage class artwork, this great big mask. And the picture on the left, I saw posted on the internet. I thought, oh, my heart sank. I thought, oh no, I hope this doesn't, picked up by a collector or somebody. But no, Jimmy found it, and we're in good hands. He brought it in to the museum, and this photograph got a lot of airplay. It ended up, we got a lot of press coverage. Went to the on TV, and it was on the Anchorage paper, and then the New York Times picked it up, and the Associated Press picked it up, and pretty soon it's all over the planet. Um, but you can see he's pretty proud of finding this piece. And here it is, the lab picture of it. And it has a lot of the original paint. The big lips on the bottom represent librettes or lip plugs. And Angela Claiborne um, did some computer work with this, some enhancement and some false color imagery to try to tease out some of the painted designs that you could see on the mask. It looks like it was repainted maybe several times, but you can see a couple of big squares there on the cheeks and a couple of rounder pieces on the cheekbones. Oftentimes those represent frostbite scars, and a round dot in the middle of the forehead, um, and uh, and so on. So lots to learn from this mask. Because it's such a spectacular piece, we actually I hand carried this down to Anchorage so they could work on it in their conservation lab. Um, these rounded pieces like this take a lot of monitoring. It doesn't have a crack in it. And so I just didn't want to be the one uh, who conserved it and had it, cracked to pieces. So I was just a little nervous about this one. So I had Monica Shaw, who's a professional conservator, is working on it now down in Anchorage. The rest of them we did. So this is what the beach looked like in the first few days. And the clumps way out there in the low tide, and stuff scattered all up and down the beach, up and down the high tide line. Some of it contained in these little clumps, some of it lying out by itself. And like I said, miles of this beach to cover, and not much daylight. One of the things that was uncovered by the shifting sands were these house posts. This is about 2 or 3 miles down from the site, and it looks like the remains of another house, not a big one, some kind of structure. But if you look closely, you'll see there's some soil, a buried soil layer there. So it could be that there's a house floor to go with this. We didn't have time to investigate that. The ground froze too quickly. But if it's still there in the spring, we'll hit it just to see, because that is a fairly old um, soil level. That's pretty darn old to be under all that dune formation. So I'm hoping that this is going to be from an earlier time period, and it may well have preserved organic materials. The problem with it, the New Knecht site is we've got this great collection. We have very little to compare it to other than ethnographic pieces from 400 years later. We don't have a lot of material from other sites, and it'd be really nice to have something a little earlier. We do know that the recognizably Yupik artifacts date back about 1,000 years, but other than that, we don't really have a good picture of what happened before that time. Not all the artifacts we found on the beach were wood. We found a fragment of a birdskin garment. If you look closely, you'll see little needle marks along here, little holes left by sewing. Bird skin was a really useful item for making skin clothing, usually made with the feathers attached. And so you could turn it inside out when it rained to keep the feathers on the inside like a down jacket. We also found braided grass cordage. This is made from the roots of ryegrass, braided, and it's still very flexible and very strong. And like these other items, I should mention that one of the miraculous thing about that mask is that it survived being torn out of the site, somehow tumbled up and down the surf, and it survived a trip of more than 2 miles down the beach before washing up in the stream mouth. And when Jimmy saw it among the driftwood, it was just his face sticking out of the sand. And it scared him to death because he thought that it was one of the missing people. He thought it was one of the bodies. One of the kind of awful things about the whole event is that a couple of the villages really got hit hard. And one of the villages that got inundated, all the coffins popped out of the ground in the cemetery, and some of them popped open. And they pulled as many as they could and stacked them out at the airport. The other village that got hit didn't have enough drainage for below ground burials. So they had above ground burials, and all those floated off someplace. So in the springtime, we expect to see a lot of human remains dressed in their Sunday clothes come up on the beaches. So that was kind of on his mind when he saw that face. But of course, it turned out to be a precious art piece rather than a body. The other interesting piece of a leather we found is this boot sole. And you can see the stitch marks. It still had a couple pieces of the original thread in it. And you can see a little bit of wear from the foot. It's probably a child's boot. We've seen this before at the site where we found boot soles, and you can actually see the mark left by somebody's foot. You know how when you look in your own shoe, you can see that kind of wear, that dark wear pattern from your foot. We've seen that in artifacts from the site. And those are actually under study by the people who are working on the footprints out at White Sands. They're now looking at whatever footprints they can find archaeologically to understand more about what footprints are all about. Up in that upper left is a picture of a mask fragment we found, and every time I find a mask piece, I drag out all the little fragments of the smaller masks, and just to see if we can find a refit. And sure enough, we found one with this. The one piece on the left we found recently on the beach. That's why it's still dark and wet. And the one on the right, it matches a one on the right we found in the excavation from 2015. And when I looked up on the map where that piece came from, it was a little discouraging because it came from way in the back of the house, near the rear wall, near the limit of our excavation. Hopefully we'll find the rest. Sooner or later, we'll find all of it because these things, unless they were burned, most of them were just fractured. So sooner or later, we'll be able to put together all of these. Other pieces we found are this Lulu handle with the paint still on it, and some inscribing, and a doll again with the paint on it. A lot of pigment left on these pieces. Even this big berry masher on the right, you can see a shadow of a pigment where it was black and red at one point. These kids found a couple really nice little kayak models, little carved models of kayaks, and just about everybody had artifacts that they found and brought in, and people were so proud and happy to be able to do that. This is what a box of artifacts. This is a day's finds on the beach, and you can see all the little worked pieces. Some are just little shot fragments, but there's some art pieces in there as well, and they're all covered with sand and salt, and they've been out floating. You can see a fire starter there, a fire hearth, the thing with the sockets in it. Most of the fire hearths we find are actually made of kayak frame parts because the kayaks were saturated in sea mammal oil that make good fire starters. Well, a lot of Shadfords, very little bone, hardly any lithics, and all the pottery. I think most of those things are probably buried in the sand right in front of the site because they didn't travel very far. So I suspect when we get under that sand, we're going to find a ton of the heavier stuff. So these are things that all floated down the beach. So once they come in, they need to be washed, and we had to soak them in several changes of fresh water to get the marine salts out of them. And because salt attracts moisture, and even when the piece dries, when that moisture gets in that salt, it'll split the piece to pieces. Like it's not just iron that damages, but any material that's got marine salt in it needs to be as free of that salt as possible. So you'll see some pieces on the left, some kayak models and a spoon and a piece of kayak paddles, or smaller pieces, and then some of the art pieces on the right, lots of mask fragments and so on. Some carvings of seals, charm boxes. Um, you can't really see it. There's a handle had some little painted animals on it. So some pretty amazingly well preserved pieces. So they need to be all soaked. We soak them for a couple weeks actually and change the water often as we could. There's Ben Fitzhugh, who by the time he showed up, it got really cold, and we were only able to get out for a couple days before it got so cold and frozen we couldn't recover anything more. But he was a big help in the lab. I also had help from Alice Bailey from the Alaska Ocean Observing System, who's their outreach person, taking photographs of the shoreline and helping with the recovery, and Katie Basili, who was there taking pictures for the New York Times, for their New York Times piece that they did. So after the pieces have been soaked, we in fresh water changes, then we pour in the PEG or polyethylene glycol, um, which is kind of a waxy solution, and it's a pretty benign chemical. It's not poisonous or anything. They actually give it to you as a laxative when you go in for testing. It's the same goop that they make you drink, and that cleans you out entirely. So don't drink it, but it's pretty harmless otherwise. And for whatever reason, it soaks into your fingernails and makes them really tough. But anyway, the larger pieces need to soak for a month or two at least. Something like, and we had a couple of pretty good pieces of kayak paddles. They'll need to go in for as much as 3 to 4 months. And these big bentwood pieces take longer. The smaller ones can just come out in just a few weeks. And I'll be going back in January to take those things out of peg so then they can be slow dried. And even though we're in the lab, people kept coming in, bringing in stuff that they found, and pleased to pose for pictures with it. And like Dale has mentioned, altogether, we got at least 1,000 artifacts and some very nice pieces. So well worth doing. And it was really great to see how the community pitched in. And of course, this is really why we do it, to have these items here so culture can be taught and preserved between generations. And having hands-on access to this is something that most people just don't have in any community. So as time went on, they got pretty frozen out there. The sea ice started forming and then piling up on the beach. We kept focusing on the beach though, because we knew it was going to be our only chance to recover pieces there. So we went up and down as much as we could and kept finding pieces like this absolutely frozen to the beach, which takes a little finesse to get off. We use started with our coffee and hot tea, and after a while, we just started bringing thermos of hot water out there. The mask on the left was found just like that, looking straight up, and it was absolutely stuck to the beach like it was glued. And I actually poured hot tea, a couple cups full, right into his mouth there before he came up. So it did the trick, but it gives you an idea of, how difficult it is. And it made it harder because a lot of things you just want to pick up and see if they're anything, and that they're less obvious. So there's Ben and I, by the time he left, the snow had started to pile up already. And the ice piled up high. And by the time I left, it was half a meter to a meter deep and just grinding whatever was left on the beach to pieces. So I'm glad we focused on that active beachfront. Uh, in back of the new erosion phase, for a couple hundred yards, were scattered all kinds of artifacts and pieces of wood. I recognized a lot of fragments from the site, a lot of our various stakes and tapes and things. Um, the bottom of one of our structures, one of our portable labs, we had these wooden floors built that we put a weather port on every year. And one of those wooden floors was pulled down about a mile down the beach and about 300 yards inland. Uh, so for hundreds of yards, um, big rafts of floating wood and artifacts were deposited. So this is where we're going to start as soon as the snow melts in probably mid-March, early April. We'll get out there, and the trick will be to get out and get the stuff before it dries out too much, before it starts to fall apart. But this is what we'll be doing. I'll probably get out there with some school kids and volunteers because school will still be in session, and see what we can do. Uh, but but it's a huge job, and I don't know what percentage of stuff we're saving, but all we can do is the best we can do. So this is what the site looks like now, and the plan is, and thanks to your donations, you made it possible for us to go ahead and plan for a summer recovery. It'll pay for the food and lodging for volunteers to come up, and we're going to recover what we can from what's left. The big dark humps there are all back dirt piles, but what remains is under those blue tarps, and there are several exposed house floors there that we'll work on and give it our best shot. Probably throughout the month of June and July. And even a small group of people, especially, we're going to focus on volunteers that have worked out there before, but we'll put out a call for any kind of volunteers because we'll need a lot of help in the lab as well. This entire site was underwater by a couple of meters. And if you look in the back, you can kind of see this kind of dark colored area. that's the extent of the backwash. That's where all the little pieces of wood and stuff are piled up back there. So it's like a second beachfront. That's how high the waves were. The entire thing was submerged, and all those big house posts and a lot of things that we put into backfill popped out. That gray stuff again, that Pleistocene clay, isn't worth much as a break wall. It'll last for a few months, but I expect by a year from now, that's going to be another shear wall of site with artifacts dropping out. But as you can see, we've got about maybe 4 meters left to go. And we know this site extends back to where that wet tundra is. And but we do know that way back there, there's another frozen house. Whether it stays frozen or whether it gets torn out, I don't know. But there's another one much smaller, a much smaller structure, but with similar kinds of preservation. And we'll go take a look at that house also that was exposed just in the form of those few house posts to see if there's anything there. But anyway, thank you for your support. It really meant a lot to me, and I know to the rest of us that there's someone out there beyond Quinnock that cared about what we're doing. Okay, thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, any questions? You can, just
Rick,
put them out there or raise your hand. Questions?
Rick,
Yeah,
David Mansell here. Did you find any sweat houses with those residences?
nope. Well, that's kind of surprised me. I know they had them, um, but usually those were in men's houses, a separate building.
Right.
And so it could be that it washed out earlier, in earlier years, or it could be back there someplace so we just haven't seen it. But we didn't find anything like that or any sweat bath rubble at all. And we didn't find until the last year we were digging there, we didn't find any hearths either. There's no hearths inside the house, but we found a kitchen finally in the very back room of the house. Found a kitchen with some big areas where they've been cooking and building fires. So it's very much like houses in Europe and America in the 18th century and before, where you'd have a separate attached kitchen. So if there's a fire, you wouldn't burn the whole house down. And I think that's what they had in mind as well.
Well, I found
Rick, could you stop sharing so we have more of a,
Oh, sure. There we go.
there we go. Okay.
I have seen a number of those sweat houses around, well, I don't know what the age of the villages were just south of there. And they were quite prominent, related to the larger residence and then a smaller house behind it. I've seen a number of those in villages.
Yeah, it was an unusual architecture, a little different than what they did before and after, because it was part of the reaction to the bow and arrow wars. So that massive structure we saw was built for protection, according to the oral histories. So I don't know. There must have been a men's house with the sweat bath, and that might be what that other structure is that we saw. We only know that it's there. We had to tunnel down, dig down from about 1.5 meters, and because it was frozen, we could only dig like 10 centimeters a day, and we had to bail it out. It would be full of water all the way to the top every day, which is okay when we're just down 10 centimeters. But when you're bailing out a meter of water, cubic meter of water every day, it got old. But the wood we saw down there was, and it looked like a modern lumber yard. It wasn't stained at all. It was all bright, and there were wood shavings and stuff. So at some point, we'll get to that. Um, hopefully it's a major structure. And if it's another house, then we're golden, but we can't really count on that.
Other questions? I'd just like to point out that it was Douglas and Lillian Ryan that suggested we do a GoFundMe. And I really appreciated that suggestion, and I'm glad it was at a number of hurdles to get there as far as demonstrating you were a nonprofit and so forth. But thanks, Doug and Lillian. And then so many of you did donate. We appreciate that too.
Oh,
Um,
thanks so much. And I'll come back and show you what we're able to do with those donations and what we're able to recover. And I think you'll be happy with the bang you get for the buck.
well, thank you. And we're still getting them, so that's good and appreciate that. Uh, Other questions? I'm just curious about the mask, that beautiful mask. Do you know the wood material? Do you have some cellular analysis that
No, we haven't had the wood types done yet, but we know that the driftwood's coming down the Kuskokwim River, most of it, and the Yukon. So most of it's going to be conifers from interior Alaska. Although, it could come from anywhere in the North Pacific, really. We haven't seen a lot of stuff. Some beaches, like on the North Pacific, south of the Bering Sea, you get bamboo and coconuts and stuff from all over,
huh,
and a lot more of the Pacific Yew, for example, from down your way, and big redwood trees, but very little of that. When they get a little bit of cedar, everybody goes crazy. That's a massive find. And when they see pictures of your driftwood beaches down where you are, the people just like, I just can't believe it. It's just, fantastic riches piled up there because people will go out and there are still people who go out and they'll spend, all summer looking for just the right piece of driftwood to make something out of it because the grain and the form of it's really crucial. And there's a lot of stories surrounding driftwood about how driftwood knows what it's going to become as it floats down the river. And the pieces would talk to each other and decide what beach they're going to land on. And the pieces that were going to be anything didn't talk, but the pieces that were going to be made into something talk to each other. And so even now, it's uncool to go out and you see a piece floating by to go out and grab it and bring it in. It's on its way to somebody else. And so, but when it gets on the beach, you grab it and then you just pile it up so someone knows it's been touched by a human, and everybody will leave it alone. You've kind of claimed that piece. So it's still a pretty good prize. Um, a lot of it gets burned now for sweat baths and so on, but there are still people who are looking for just the right piece for carving and so on.
In the old days, did the people?
Robert has a question. This Robert? Robert?
Hi, can you hear me?
Just a second, David. We'll get right to you. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Bob Walls. Thanks, Rick, for a wonderful talk and for all the good work that you're doing up there. I guess my question is, I'm curious about the effect of all of this on the community. And I can see where something like this might be somewhat traumatizing to some people. Seeing this history literally washed away. But at the same time, I can also see maybe it's a kind of a healing event, almost therapeutic, in that people are able to collaborate and participate in saving something that the storm has wrought. I'm wondering if you could just speak a little bit more about the community's response to all of this.
Yeah, it's a very good point. It was traumatic for all of us, and yeah, coming together and working together to make the best of it really did help. I know it helped me feel better about it, and it was a great feeling when I first got off the plane. I got there and everybody was there with their boxes. these big sagging boxes full of artifacts. And it was so great to see everybody pitch in like that. And in a lot of places, most places, there'd be a lot of collection and looting, and people would be bringing it home. I'm not aware of a single piece that went that way. Sometimes I saw one piece sticking out of the site, and it was frozen in there, and it was a nice ulu handle. So I didn't try to pry it out. I came back the next day and it was gone, and my heart kind of sank. But sure enough, it got turned in, and it was really great. People young and old, and it was great because people were having conversations about it, and it was what really got me was that the kids that had grown up with the project had been out helping us for years, and I heard them telling the other kids and adults about artifacts and how to recognize them using some of the same lines that I'd used when we were teaching them out at the site. And it was really, really fun to see how much of that knowledge had really sunk in. That and the treatment of the pieces too. You didn't I didn't really have to do any training for people because the things are pretty delicate and it's easy to break things or to mistreat them, and between the time they get conserved, and everybody knew what to do. Um, that was really, I think that opening the museum for the first time and having all the artifacts come back and people see them was really a major highlight of my career. But this was also one, coming to the village and seeing everybody already at work, already recovering these things and in full swing. It was really great.
Robert Hall writes a lot about how natives present, in their own writing, what things that affect them are like. Are there people in your community that are writing about this, the native community?
Um, Less a written record than a spoken one. It's more of an oral tradition. Um, there's not a lot of written literature, not yet anyway. A little bit. Some of the kids, when they do written assignments in school, talk
Yeah.
about their experiences out at the site. And there are songwriters. They write songs about the site and artifacts for the dance group.
Hmm.
The first performance of the dance group was written out at the site by these kids who wanted their ancestors to participate in writing the song. And they got together and came up with a song in Yupik and translated. It was talking about the storm, uh, an earlier storm, and welcoming the artifacts back to the community as if they were people.
Hmm.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. It was the first dance in more than 100 years, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house. It was pretty great.
Thank you.
Rick,
David?
David Mansell here again. Um, well, these people, they must collect wood throughout the summer for the winter. So they must pile up wood somewhere around the village for it's accessible, because once in the wintertime, you can't find it. Do you find any evidence of that whatsoever?
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things we saw when the site kind of washed away were piles of wood, much like the ones they have now. What they do now is they kind of build a teepee shape out of it, and so it dries. Uh, but in fact, and the better pieces of wood you get from the beach, the ones that you can use for that are more useful and for things like fish racks and stuff. Um, but during the winter, when it's frozen, the rivers and stuff are frozen, and you can get out there with a snow machine. They'll go way back to the backcountry and cut some of the cottonwoods and stuff. So they can go back 10 or 20 miles and get that, and then they sell to each other to pay for snow machine fuel.
Hmm.
And a toboggan full of wood will run you about $300.
How much?
About $300.
Yeah. Oh.
It's expensive. a 5 gallon bucket of berries is about $200 to $300.
Wow.
Other questions?
Um, Rick, did anybody recognize any of the mask, what the masks were? Any of the people in the village?
Not anymore. That tradition was driven out by the missionaries,
Ah.
along with the dancing. And it depended, that survival of those kind of things depended a lot about on which denomination was allotted to your village. Sheldon Jackson back in the 1890s, had all these missionaries come up from different, trying to save souls and so on. They divided up Alaska among the different denominations. The Methodists got the Aleutians, the Baptists got Kodiak, the Moravians got a big chunk of the YK Delta, the Presbyterians got Sitka, and so on. The Catholics got a big chunk around St. Mary's, and some religions were a lot more tolerant. I know the Jesuits are really good about it. And the only reason that we know as much as we do about masks and traditional belief systems is because some of the denominations were tolerant. The Moravians were not,
Mm.
and that's why it took until we were there, and the young people asked their elders for permission to start dancing again, and they did. But it was, I think Quinnock was one of the last villages, and because they were doing the first dance when they have a big dance festival in Bethel, they were invited. They given the honor of first dance, uh, and became the first group to perform that year.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Other questions? On the mask, what are the tools to carve it? Did you find?
Well, it's a good question. When we turn them over, and I should have included a picture of the mat. I usually do that, but the the flip sides of the mask are as interesting as the fronts, because you can even tell the handedness of the carver by the way they do the eyes. And a mask carver showed me that eyes are really difficult to do, and you can tell if he's right-handed or left-handed by how the eyes are. Um, anyway, they would take beaver teeth or muskrats or as porcupine incisors and insert those into a handle. And so the back of the mask looks just like when you see a beaver chewed log, except it's just one tooth. And you see these great big gouges where they're carving it's a little crescent shaped handle with a tooth and boy, they really work. We've tried a couple of them, and it works very, very well. It's a little bit like a crooked knife. And later in time, when you look at steel tools, they leave a much broader carving mark. So you can tell earlier masks from later ones by the shape of those carving tool marks in the back.
Wow.
Do the masks have holes running around the tops of the mask like they had attachments for hair or furs or other things on them?
The dolls do. And we know that Yupik masks had these great big hoops that represent the layers in the universe with all the animals attached and so on. But we find very few holes in them that would indicate that. So we're trying to figure out how in pre-contact times they attached those hoops. We know they had them. They may have tied them on rather than actually put holes. We get the holes from where you attach the string to put on your head. We get those, but no other holes around the circumference. We get little holes from where the teeth were, and we find wooden mask teeth, and sometimes the mask teeth are still in there, and little plugs where they put in mustache and stuff, and librets, but not the hoops, not yet.
The bird skin garments do you think they had feathers still on them, or they?
Yeah, they would have had feathers on them. A plain bird skin And trying to imagine wearing a coat of like chicken skin, you know, not so good. But with a big thick thing of feathers, and these are just the breasts of like shorebirds and stuff or ducks. And so and they would sew those together. And so you see these big panels, and it must take, I don't know, 50 or 100 birds to make one of these. But they last a long time. They look good in ethnographic collections, um, and tough, very warm garments.
Yeah, so the feathers and the down are left on
Yeah,
skins and then so that's interesting. Yeah. Huh.
yeah.
I think you said last time that you had found some intestine raincoats.
Not the whole ones, just pieces.
Yeah.
Pieces of them, which were, to get even a piece of gut skin is pretty amazing. One of the things we found this year, I'm glad you brought that up, was a great big, first I thought it was leather, but it's some kind of tissue. It might be a bladder. Uh, they used all sorts of any kind of tissue, even the lining of a whale's tongue could be used. But it's cut round, and it looks like we may have found a drumhead, a
Mhm.
complete drumhead, which would be wild. Uh, so that's something we need to conserve and take a look at. We haven't had really a chance to analyze these things yet. Just we're just trying to get them safe and out of harm's way. But that piece blew me away. It may have come from a frozen layer or something because that was one of the things we'd never seen before.
Hmm.
So even though we've seen, somewhere between 150 and 200,000 artifacts, we're still finding new things.
That's true in wet sites. It's always a surprise. You're always finding new things.
Yeah. And this whole idea that you can take a 10% sample of the site and know all about it is bunk.
So you'll probably add a lot to your research now with the thousands of additional artifacts. You found 1,000 more, and then you're projecting five or more thousand.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'd be surprised if it was under 5,000.
Yeah.
We
So
yeah, if we have experienced diggers out there, if they're new people, I'm always, is this an artifact? Is this an artifact? Because it takes a long time to learn, get your way around wood and to figure out what's worked and what's not. And I usually just say, keep it, we'll sort it out in the lab, keep everything. But
hmm,
if if we get experienced diggers and we do screen and below that sand in front of the site, we get a few centimeters under that. It's going to be loaded with all that pottery. All the ivory carvings are down there, all the lithics. So that's going to be loaded. Stuff that fell off of the wave and just kind of plopped on the beach and got covered by sand. So we'll probably just get a couple. That'd be a good place for our new diggers. If you guys haven't dug at a wood site before, we'll put you down there to dig for ivory carvings. Big fun.
great. Um, Questions? Anything else? Did were you planning to? How long were you planning to continue work there before this happened? Was it coming to an end, or?
No, no, I'm not going to let it go. Um, this might speed it up a little bit, but no, I'm going to stick with it as long as I'm able because there's just so much information there, and I just can't let it calve off into the water.
Thank you. Yeah. Are you going to be in San Francisco for the essay? Are you planning any presentations at the nationals?
No, I haven't done that for a while. It's so expensive to do that,
Yeah.
and if I have some extra money, I'd rather spend it doing it than talking about it.
Yeah. Oh, great. Other questions? I guess probably somebody, there's some interest in how you're going to go about recruiting volunteers and what's that involved? And I guess you have facilities for them to stay and
Yeah, yeah,
cook their meals and
we'll generally take anybody that's crazy enough to do it. Um,
like
but
Ben.
it's it's living pretty close to the bone. It's not it's better than living in a tent. So you get to sleep inside. There's hot showers. There's laundry and a big kitchen, and so it's for an archaeological camp. It's pretty comfy. Not too bad. But the outdoor scene is pretty. It can get pretty gritty. We work rain or shine. And if it's really too tough, there's always the lab. And if somebody's knees wear out, we can always put them in the lab. There's lots to do in the lab, and lab work's a lot of fun too. So we'll usually have a half and half, half up in the front line, and the other half back working on the pieces.
Oh, that's neat to know. Yeah. Anne, did you?
Sure. I was lucky enough to live just down the coast for a while, and I know how important those artifacts are. I'm also the mom of a volunteer, Rick, Beck Zacharias, who discovered that just getting out to Nualik could be a challenge because she ended up with an extra day in Anchorage because of storms. I wanted to say that I put in the chat information about a new book.
Oh yeah.
Describes how bird skins are worked.
Oh, let me see that. Could you put it up again? Or you
I
said,
think it's right there.
oh, okay. So where did you get the book? I think
It's a University of Washington Press book.
Blind
Oh.
Park.
Oh yeah, one of Van Reardon's products.
Yes.
He turns out stuff like you wouldn't believe. She's got like a 5 or 6 foot shelf.
And this is a collection of decades of work talking to the people who still make things by hand.
She did one on squirrel skin parkas too.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that's great. That's great to know. I can't believe how she must crank out 2 of these a year. Unreal.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, when we were visiting Sven Hawkinson, who's now at the Berg, he was showing us the black bear guts that had been processed to make parkas, and they're much wider than seal guts.
Yeah, but the disadvantage is they get really weak during certain times of the year because of the fish bones puncture them a little bit. Not completely, so they're really rough on the bear intestine. So I've heard that you got to be really careful when you actually harvest your bear gut.
What did you say about the last part?
You've got to be careful about what about what season you.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, for bear guts. Or sometimes I've seen bags made of the lining of the lungs of a bear. So any kind of tissue can be used. Or sometimes you see swan's feet, which are actually really tough, sewn together to make little bags. And of course, fish skin. But there isn't much that people didn't figure out how to use.
Yeah. Yeah, he volunteered to come to Squaxin if anybody's a bear hunter to help him process it. He's doing a lot of good things at the Berk and UW.
Oh yeah, he's been up a couple times.
Has he?
To dig. Oh yeah,
huh.
He's good friends with the ivory carver there, and they do a lot of carving. So would whittle out a little doll or something and toss it into somebody's screen. I think I've got a couple of his pieces that he did while he was digging. Not to fool anybody, but just to contribute.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good. And Jim Chatters wanted me to tell you hello. His wife's birthday tonight, so he had to
Oh, yeah, I can't get out of
go out
that.
with Jenny, but he sent his best. Other questions, comments? Well, we sure appreciate it. We do have time for a question or more if somebody has one. It was interesting how you have to deal with the human remains.
Well,
But
I guess I have one conservation wise. So when you freshwater soak and clean the wood, how do you store it? You know, when you have the mask, how do you keep them in a preservation um
Well, once they come out after they've been slow dried, then they can be stored like any other organic artifact. Uh,
okay.
Keep them away from acidy materials, you know.
Mhm.
But as long as you've got a buffered storage and can keep a modicum of climate control. We don't have a lot of climate control in the museum. What we do is we have it things in a box, in a box, in a box, in a cabinet, that kind of
Mhm.
thing. So if there are changes, they're slow changes. And the challenging thing with the wood is the humidity
Yep.
and keeping the humidity and keeping a when you're in a marine environment, keeping a level of humidity at the right level is it gets expensive.
Mm.
So that's tough. But
Okay.
you know, but other than that, they're not as bulletproof, of course, as lithics or
Hmm.
pottery, but it's not too bad. You know, they've kept pretty well. And pieces that I worked on from the Carlick site in back in the 1980s still look like they're still good. They look
Mm.
fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Rick, do you see any evidence for smoking at all?
Tobacco?
Yeah, or any kind of pipe or anything?
No, just because the site pretty much predates um, a lot of trading in tobacco in that part of the world anyway. We do get a little bit of snus. There's a Yupik name for it. I can't remember, but you take birch fungus and you snort it
Hmm.
and you get a little like a 20-minute buzz out of it. And it's still used today. Now they mix it with tobacco, but you take a birch fungus and you grind it up to a powder and you use it like a snuff. And
Mhm.
they still sell it in the village. I think it's about $20 for a little bag of it. Um, and we found some of those birchwood fungus. And the story is that the older they are, the stronger they are. So when word got out that we found some at the site, a few people came out and said, "Hey, can you hit me up with some of that birch fungus? You know, 400-year-old." So I can't vouch for it. Never tried it, but it's a popular commodity in Yupik country.
hmm,
But not never seen tobacco, never seen a smoking pipe.
hmm. I got a basket question for you.
Okay.
Uh, the and you said this somewhere. We know of the coil basket as a major Eskimo or Aleut basket style with the knob but you indicated you don't find coil basketry, and it might have been something learned, say, from Germans making
Yeah.
beehives, like they do with
Well, you're right.
coils.
Almost, we find almost not quite zero, a couple little pieces, but nothing like the coil basketry that you people make now. And I think it may have come from the Moravians because the other example of a sudden appearance of coiled basketry is in the Eastern Arctic in
Uh,
Labrador. And both of those places were missionized by Moravians.
hmm,
And the Moravians come from an area in Germany that has that kind of basket making tradition. of beehives are the big coarse ones, but they make other coiled baskets too. And I think it was taught as part of like a household economy, like a home ec kind of thing. Um, and
Hmm.
it became popular because they're really tough and you can way tougher and easier to transport, so you could sell them to tourists, for example, and they're a big tourist item. So I think that might be why they took off. Maybe they're easier to make than twine baskets. I wouldn't know.
Mhm.
You do have the seagrass baskets, the finely woven ones, don't you?
Yeah, and some of them look almost like cloth. The
But
stitch gauge is so small on those. It's miraculous. Most of what we find are a big open weave twined pieces out of grass. And grass harvesting was a major event, I think in the fall, when they would go get in big bundles. And we found even in the site in the house, the big bundles of site that big bundles of grass that hadn't been utilized yet.
Hmm. If the Germans had that kind of influence, or the Bavarians, willow wicker is a huge basketry tradition throughout Europe. Um, is there enough willow around up there that they might pick on willow basketry too?
Yeah, it could have been. I've seen pictures of great big fish baskets that may have been done with that kind of thing, sort of like the wattle and daub
Yeah.
uh, tradition. But hmm, yeah, good question. I haven't looked at enough of the historic basketry to be able to tell you. And it would be the larger pieces that don't get collected very much.
No.
Fish
So,
traps, fish traps, maybe.
but there is willow out there. I mean,
There's willow, lots of
go
willow.
get the cottonwood, you probably,
Yeah, there's lots of little willow that you could
yeah,
use, and we know that they used. We find strips of bark and root that were used as for hafting things,
yeah. Hmm.
and split spruce too, and some of that might have been traded.
Yeah. Ed Carrier still wants to come up and learn your basketry. I don't know.
That would be great.
He'd bring his too. Yeah. So, okay. Other questions? Well, we
What
really,
what are the field season parameters up there?
Uh, well, um, pretty much June and July. In August, winter starts really. The winter storms kick in around mid-August, and
Mm.
early August we get the no-see-ums, and they come out in biblical numbers. So I'm really so the clouds are so thick that we have to get people out of their squares for a few minutes before we can take a picture because it's so thick. It's just miserable. But having said that, if we're going strong and things are going well, we've gone into early September before.
Mm.
But you start to lose your daylight and so on. But anyway, uh, we're probably going to minimally the month of June, hopefully far into July as we can. Some of it's supervision. I have to do a contract um, in mid-July to August, and if I can get somebody to supervise the project, we'll run it all summer long.
Hmm. Okay.
well, thank you. And I'm glad we've been able to do this and that you persevered and did that first talk under kind of scary conditions. Like somebody said, it's hard to know you're going to go from Anchorage to where you're supposed to be for a talk. And we thank Starlink uh, for connecting us. But uh, thanks again. Let us know if there's anything we can do at this end. And you're a lifetime member now, so you'll get invited to other ones. We appreciate you letting us know how it goes in the fall, and we'll continue on this end with the go GoFundMe, and great idea that Doug and Lillian gave us. So thanks, and I know it's late there. It must be 9:30 anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and thanks for having me, and thank you so much for the GoFundMe effort. Um, as you can see, we can do a lot with a little bit, and you guys really came through for us, and we really appreciate it. And hopefully, we'll see some of you up there one way or another, and maybe virtually. I'm going to be up there in January. If you're interested, I'm happy to do a little Zoom walkthrough of some of the stuff you didn't get to see of some of the artifacts in process.
Okay.
Any of you are welcome anytime, singly or in groups.
Thank you. Well, thanks so much. We appreciate the ability to be part of what you're doing, and it's very, very heroic in many ways.
Thank you to everyone for sharing all of this. I came in late and I just thought I'd say good night and have a good Christmas if I don't talk to any of you before.
Thank you. And Merry Christmas to everybody. Have a great holiday. And we'll have this recorded too. So a number of people couldn't come tonight. They want to be able to see it, and appreciate that. Anything else, Matt? Our president very kindly has been recording things. He works for Bello with